It's like this one situation that the USSR tried to cover up for a while, but then when it disbanded, it all got out.
Yeah.
And
like a lot of stuff.
And Russia didn't take liability for it.
Yeah.
But I forget like the specific details of the story, but there's this lake, or there was this lake out somewhere in eastern Russia.
Okay.
That had a town full of nuclear plant workers because they had a major nuclear plant there.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, being a nuclear plant in the USSR, a leak happened.
Surprise, surprise.
And, except, no one knew about it except for the people working in plant. So, all of that nuclear waste started spilling into the lake, except citizens of these towns would go to that lake daily, whether to swim, to collect water, and then, of course, they started dying because of it.
Yeah.
And one night, they were all woken up to the Soviet military waking them up by banging on their doors, telling them to evacuate. That was because there was a gas in the air coming from that toxic waste. So then, when everyone evacuated, many of the people who evacuated still died.
Yeah, because
Two,
that's what happens.
Soviets had attempt after attempt of trying to get the waste out of the water, and they just figured that it was best to dry the lake up and cover all the toxic waste with concrete blocks.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, you can't really get
past
uranium 234 or whatever
is
it
there
is.
like superpowered frogs now?
Oh no, they're dead frogs.
The frogs
they're
are dead.
like mega dead frogs.
Well, I mean,
Mega dead.
if you look at that's what happened with
Like they were just vaporized.
the Soviet Union was terrible. Like everyone talks about how bad the Nazis are. I think the Soviet Union was like 100 times worse than the Nazis.
They killed a lot more people.
They killed a lot more people and they committed a lot more atrocities. I mean, you look at like have you heard? You guys have all heard of like Chernobyl, right?
Yes.
Like the massive. Chernobyl was a massive nuclear plant. It was the largest nuclear plant failure ever in human history, and basically it was a result of the Soviets using cheap technology and them using a lot of things, but when it boils down to it, no pun intended. The Soviets they want to run very risky, uncalculated tests using a lot of technology that was ill prepared with cheap material, and just bad stuff happened. So they weren't planning on once the initial explosion happened. So they were just, and then because you have the nuclear workers and their families, there was this whole city behind it, and like that's obviously in the contamination zone. So they just weren't planning on telling anyone until the U.S. got satellite images of it, and then it made world news. And they're like, oh, well, if everyone already knows about it, we might as well tell these people to leave. And
Too late.
Yeah, well, and then everyone knows like what happened with Chernobyl and like how many casualties it took and stuff. But it's estimated that it took up to like I think it's like 300,000 people died.
Yeah.
And then the death count, the official Soviet death count of the disaster that is still in Soviet records is 31 people. Because the number is so propagated and the number is so lied that they counted the immediate deaths of the explosion and nothing like radiation or anything to do with that. Yeah.
And like that lake that I was talking about earlier, that is what happens when foreign countries don't get satellite images of these nuclear disasters.
I don't intervene.
Yeah. Well, and then it brings up how many other atrocities have the Soviet Unions have they committed, and that we don't know about because
Ultra tons.
yeah, simply we weren't there to catch a satellite image and spill it to the public, or maybe it wasn't in that document that the Soviets supposedly released or whatever. So a new topic. I'm sorry to segue. I'm in a little bit of hot water because of a new video I released. I don't know if you boys have seen it.
The one with Greta Thunberg.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
Personally, I like that video a
I haven't
lot.
seen that one yet.
in it, I delve into such controversial subjects as man-made climate change, and a lot of people are. I think one of the comments accused me of their quote. I am, and I quote. You are siding with the people who make a profit by destroying the earth. So now
I should be in school.
You're the victim.
well, and then I replied to that. I was like, wait, you're getting paid? And then she deleted her comment, but I don't know. Anyway, but I'm apparently this big mean person for bullying Greta Thunberg first. How do you guys feel about the whole climate change thing, or Greta Thunberg's issue, or just the whole issue in general? I'm very interested to hear how you boys feel about it.
I don't know why she skipped school.
Yeah, freaking, you're taking a sick day, Greta? Come on.
They're called mental health days.
Oh, shoot. She was taking one of her mental health days.
There's a whole lot of them.
There's 12, bro. Wait, do we get those?
No.
Yeah.
I understand that climate
I could
change
take a mental health day
is
tomorrow.
a huge problem.
Oh yeah, it's real.
Yes, it's a real, legitimate problem.
However,
Yes, however, I don't feel like people who at least seem like they are against these climate change activists like Greta Thunberg.
I think
I hate how,
People against Greta Thunberg. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
like how people who seem to be against people like Greta Thunberg. I hate how they're scrutinized by not only people like Greta Thunberg, but just the general millennial,
Yeah, just
early
like that.
Gen Z society.
Well, I mean, shouldn't they be scrutinized if climate change is a super big deal though?
It's almost counterproductive.
In the interest of humanity, shouldn't they be scrutinized?
what would we even do to
yes,
help?
but they assume that
change.
if
We're pretty much
that
too far
if
gone.
you don't want
Oh,
to
wow.
help this cause,
That's
then
tough.
you immediately dismiss that climate change isn't a problem. That's their thought process.
If you might
That
not
is
have enough
not
money
the
to-
thought process.
Well, here's what I
like
think. I see crop yielding at an all-time high. I see climate-related deaths at an all-time low. I see the Earth more prosperous, more green, more oxygen-filled than ever before. So, me being a person, I think if that video didn't explain my point of view, I do dismiss climate change as being a big issue. I don't think it's a big issue. In fact, if anything,
it would just lower enough area for
the change in climate has helped the Earth and people. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, the animals. We should be concerned about people." It has helped people more than anything else. And I'm not necessarily dismissing that. We should. Yeah, of course, we shouldn't
all animals.
what do turtles do?
we shouldn't mindlessly pump CO2 or dirty chemicals or pollution into the atmosphere. Of course not. And we do need to find renewable and sustainable forms of energy. However, we literally have come across an endless supply of energy. It's called nuclear energy. It works, and it's endless, and it produces no carbon dioxide whatsoever. However, why are all these climate activists so afraid of it? Nuclear energy right now is the only way to get to net zero, and it's 10 times more efficient than coal or oil or anything. But I see all. Here's what I think. I think if there are what I see in activists like Greta Thunberg or really anyone who's like super big on climate change, I see that they don't propose any solutions. And if there's a problem that there's no solutions proposed to, or the need to propose an honest solution, then where's the problem?
It's actually kind of hypocritical.
Yeah.
They say, hey,
it's
help
counterproductive
this,
and
but
hypocritical.
I'm not going to help you help this.
Yeah.
I'm just
It's
gonna tell you to do it.
counterproductive.
Well, yeah, but like, you know, I think people are super used to like screaming about it. Like,
Yes,
hey,
counterproductive.
here's, you know, this is a big problem. I hate climate change. It's gonna kill us all. Okay, here's nuclear energy. It's gonna solve literally all of our problems. We just need to get nuclear energy. No, I don't want to solve our problem. I want to keep yelling about it.
Counterproductive.
Exactly. But here's where my point of view lies, and here's a controversial point of view for you all. So I was, I had the privilege of seeing an interview with this billionaire who had his honeymoon, he had his wedding anniversary in Antarctica. And what they did in Antarctica is they went and they went to this like, you know, like science base or whatever. There's like a couple dozen of them set up there. And so the first thing they did is they brought them these little basically cylinders of ice that's drilled out of the ground, and they're drilled out at different points in the ice sheet.
Yeah.
So what was seen of those different ice sheets is that there was one from about like 10 to 50,000 years ago, and then there was one from about there was one from 50,000 years ago. There was one from 10,000 years ago. And what was seen between both of them is that there was you could see how like warming has affected. So the Earth has gradually been on a state of warming. What people fail to realize when they talk about climate change is that Earth has always been warming. Like,
We're just speeding up the process.
I don't even think we're speeding up the process. I mean, it's warmed to the same extent for thousands of years. And even if we are speeding up the process, it will ultimately go back down. And so we're talking like 100 years from now, it's not going to matter because it's already going to be on its way down. There's this such thing as the climate cycle, and like, you know, stuff like that, and outside elements that exist.
Wait, Mitchell, what's the polar ice thing? I know, it was like dinosaurs and then ice. I can't remember.
What?
Ice Age.
Ice Age, thank you.
No, it's like
Big brain.
So I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that I hate the term climate denier. I'm not a climate denier. I do think there's climate change. I mean, it's obvious that the climate is changing. There is warming. Yes, I do see that. However, I do not think that we as humans are doing anything to make any sort of catastrophic change in the Earth anytime soon.
it's like
That's my opinion.
yeah. Let's say all of these Renaissance to Enlightenment explorers who are exploring all this new territory. Let's use Greenland as an example because that's been a hot topic in the news lately, not only because of the US wanting to take Greenland, but also about much of it melting. Let's say, well, Zach, you haven't really done anything for this podcast.
Zach is
still
alive.
Look up when Greenland was first discovered. Because I'd imagine that on like a timeline of human history, it was like a very short time ago, right?
Like, yeah, in like the
It's like
grand scheme of things.
And then if you look at from when on this big timeline of human history, if you look at that small chunk of time that we've known that Greenland, you know, existed, let's say this was when we first discovered Greenland. I'm pointing at a wall right now. And just imagine that it's at its normal state without any of the ice melting. Or without any of the ice melting. We'll get to that later. And then over here is Greenland now with all of the ice melting. How do you know that Greenland was the same as we discovered it for this entire other chunk of human history. How do you know that we caused the melting of Greenland in this small chunk of time?
Well, the facts, and I'm going to say facts, very capital F facts, simply are that we couldn't.
Yes, we couldn't.
We couldn't tell, and the only way we could tell is by getting general measurements of the temperature back then, or the climate back then. Which,
yes, and
which
that's not always 100% accurate.
Well, it's not 100% accurate, but like the math shows, I mean, with how cold it was before and how cold it is now, it's just simply impossible by that sliver of time that we could have inflicted a damage significant enough to increase by a significant amount the warming of said thing. I mean, this is just, if you were looking at it on a graph, this would just be naturally occurring. But here's my thing. Everyone's like, well then, why is everyone talking about global warming? Why is this? Because there's a profit to be made with the idea of global warming. I mean, no one thinks about this, but a lot of people, a lot of science regiments are dedicated making money off of like off of like the this past, like what was it, the global the climate strike, that made a lot of money for a lot of people because they got people interested, they got tweets on Twitter trending. I mean, that's just one tiny little example. We look at science, like supposed science departments, like yeah, you can I was talking to someone who worked in a climate worked with climate readings and that, and like yeah, they said on a regular basis they would have government officials. He was talking about that done in London. They would have government officials come in and edit certain aspects of a graph in order to match basically their agenda. So there is money to be made in climate change. I mean, a good example is an end to American fracking, because the government do you know what RT Times is? The news source. It's RT. It's a news source completely controlled by the Kremlin. They ran a bunch of anti-fracking ads, which was basically the U.S. right now is the number one fracking country in the world. And if you don't know what fracking is, it's a method of getting oil, blah, 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 from the ocean, yada, yada. You can look it up later. But anyway, what they did is they were like, oh, well, fracking causes all this climate change. Fracking causes all this, it produces so much CO2 and blah, blah, blah. And so when you get people to hate like CO stuff because it produces climate change, you get people to hate where it comes from, which is fracking. And that benefits Russia a lot because Russia wants to put an end to U.S. fracking. And I mean, if we're really going in full conspiracy mode here, all of the this, well, I mean, it would be. I think it's more scary that it's not. There was a few times that the U.S. had to sue some of these like climate change activist groups, and they found out that all of the you can look this up, all of the largest climate change like groups that are kind of on the front lines of the whole climate change argument, all of them are receiving a significant portion of their money from the Kremlin. Because why? Because climate change propaganda influences American infrastructure in the terms of oil and digging for oil. So, there is political and agenda-driven gain to be made by climate change and the idea of climate change, and that's simply why I think I look twice when I see something about supposed climate change.
Yeah. Zach, did you look up when Greenland...
10th century.
10th century. Okay, that would have been 900s, right? 10th century,
Yeah.
900. That was over 1,000 years ago. If you're looking at modern human history, we have developed records of past experiences from all these different civilizations that may seem like a long time. But in this grand timeline of human history that I was talking about earlier, let's say it's the 9th or 10th century, and we assume that Greenland has always been this way. It's always had this much ice. Because these explorers, they generally don't know any better. They think that this is the very first time any human has ever seen this. But if you go way back in human history, chances are that Greenland was way bigger than what they discovered at. Like,
The ice
let's
age
think about
and,
let's think about
plate
Greenland.
tectonics moving and stuff.
Yes,
It's always
let's think
been
about
bigger.
Greenland during the Ice Age. How massive would Greenland be during the Ice Age?
Pretty gosh dang big.
Yes, it would be way bigger than what we discovered it at, right?
We also don't know how big it could have been because of plate tectonics.
Yeah, and like Pangea and stuff.
Yes, it's just this natural warming of the Earth that is causing Greenland to gradually melt away.
Yeah.
Because it's probably been doing this for millions of years.
I completely agree. Well, Mitchell, I should start my own political podcast with just Mitchell. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
But-
topic.
Well,
But you guys do think my point is valid, right?
It completely valid. Well, it's getting kind of late, kind of chilly.
Yeah.
In the Crackin, a cold one. That's all for now. Thank you all for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome.
Thanks
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that'll be it. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.